In the context of the EU Aid Volunteers Initiative, the policy of safeguarding children and vulnerable adults is of paramount importance. It's central because it's the sending organizations actually who have the primary and full responsibility of protecting these vulnerable populations. And the idea is that in creating any program, in sending any volunteer, you would ensure that they're going to safe environments that are respectful and dignified. And so of course, in trying to minimize the risk, in any of your activities, you would think of these vulnerable populations and create measures to protect them. And so just in general, what the EU kind of foresees as part of these procedures is that first you would have a declaration that this is a thing that you care about, that you are protecting children and safeguarding vulnerable adults, particularly in the context of sexual abuse. And then you would have a policy about this as well, so a declaration and a policy. As a second step, you would also create a complaint mechanism, right? Because what good is it to have a policy if people don't have a means to kind of file a complaint and follow a procedure in that sense. It is also important to assign responsibilities. As you know, when there's a volunteer involved, there's a sending organization, there's a hosting organization, and of course there's a volunteer. So the role that everyone plays in protecting children and vulnerable adults must be clear. There's also preventive measures that you can take as a sending organization, both in the selection of your staff, but also in the selection of the volunteers, right? So you make sure that you maybe run a background check, that you ask for the criminal record, things like that to make sure that you're selecting the right profiles. There's also training that you can do. So these concepts are not necessarily evident to people, so you introduce the concepts, why children and adults or vulnerable adults rather, are a particular risk, or why they're vulnerable. And also you speak of the consequences, right? Because it's not only important to highlight the risk, but in a serious thing like this, you also have to speak of the consequences. It's important when you're going to new communities as a volunteer that you provide information about what the circumstances on the ground are, what the risks are, and what measures they can take for prevention. They're about to encounter a new culture. So what can they do to make sure they don't place themselves in risky positions or that they don't endanger others around them? And the last, I guess, would be to really have a culture of inclusion, to make sure that you can talk about these issues, that they don't become taboo, that everyone is fully conversant with the importance, with the policy, and that everyone feels free to discuss these issues. And so part of the question was, how has LAGIL actually improved in these things? And first of all, it is an integral part of the volunteer charter, so we make sure that they know that this is something that LAGIL cares about, that this is something that LAGIL takes very seriously. And so this is a key element of how we select our volunteers as well. We ask for the criminal records to make sure that we're selecting the right people. And as well, there's changes within the organization that have taken place. You know, we've organized meetings to make staff aware about the importance of these issues. There's a policy of zero tolerance, of course, and so these are kind of the measures that we've taken.